480 BC. Athens is empty. Its people have fled. The Persian fleet waits. Over 1,000 ships. Then a message arrives. A message designed to trick an empire. What followed was one of the greatest naval victories in history. This was the Battle of Salamis.
In September 480 BCE, an enslaved man named Sicanus slipped through the lines of a massive Persian encampment. He carried a message for King Xerxes with a specific, treasonous claim. The Greeks were paralyzed by panic and intended to flee the straits at dawn. The message came from the Athenian commander Themistocles, and the math of the war made his desperation look genuine. He was commanding 380 Greek ships, cornered against a Persian armada that ancient sources claim numbered over 1,200 vessels. By the time this message reached the king, Athens had already fallen. Xerxes had marched his army into the city and burned the homes, the temples, and the Acropolis to ash. Themistocles responded with a total evacuation. He moved every man, woman, and child onto the water, betting that as long as the Athenian fleet survived, the city had not truly been conquered. This letter to Xerxes provided the psychological leverage needed to draw the king into a fight. It was a tactical pivot designed to turn a vulnerable group of refugees into the spring of a lethal ambush. While the Persian military followed the singular will of an emperor, the Greek alliance was fracturing. Many commanders from the Peloponnese and Corinth were arguing to abandon the straits entirely and retreat south to defend the Isthmus of Corinth. Themistocles knew he could not maintain this coalition through political debate alone. He also realized that if the Greeks fought in open water, the superior speed and seamanship of the Persian crews would inevitably overwhelm them. To keep the allies from fleeing, he threatened to withdraw the Athenian ships, more than half the remaining Greek force, and sail away to Italy. It was a move that would have left the rest of Greece to face the Persians alone. His false message to Xerxes was the final piece of the plan. He wanted to provoke the king into blocking the exits of the strait overnight, physically locking both the Persians and his own reluctant allies into a confined battlefield. By engineering a scenario where no ship could retreat, Themistocles stripped away the option of flight. He forced a fight to the death on the specific geographic terms he had spent years preparing for. Xerxes found the report believable because he had seen it before. At Thermopylae, a Greek trader had guided his troops through a secret mountain path to crush the Spartans. To the Persian leadership, another Greek commander looking to defect seemed like a predictable path to victory. Desiring a final, decisive blow to end the war, Xerxes rejected the few voices of caution among his advisors. He ordered his rowers to spend the entire night at their oars, sealing the western and eastern exits of the strait. At dawn, Xerxes took his position on a throne overlooking the water from Mount Aigaleo. He had gathered his court to watch the destruction of a retreating enemy. As the sun rose, the exhausted Persian crews realized the message was a lie. Emerging from the bay were not fleeing cowards, but a disciplined Greek line that sang a war song as their oars hit the water in perfect, terrifying unison. The king's focus on dominance blinded him to the tactical reality. He had pushed hundreds of tired men into a meticulously prepared kill zone, where his greatest strength was about to become his primary weakness. The battlefield was a geographic bottleneck. The straits at Salamis measured only 1 to 1.5 kilometers wide. This channel was dominated by the Etesian winds and local sea breezes, which created difficult, unpredictable currents for any large fleet. The Persian ships were built for speed in open seas, but for this invasion, they had been modified to carry an extra 70 soldiers per deck. In these tight, turbulent waters, that extra weight made the ships top-heavy and dangerously difficult to steer. In contrast, the Greek trireme was designed for high-impact, close-quarters combat. The hull was heavily reinforced, housing 170 rowers stacked in 3 layers to provide immediate, explosive power. This was the ship's primary weapon, a massive bronze-encased ram. It was designed to punch through enemy hulls just below the waterline, using the ship's own momentum to shatter wooden frames. As the Greek line accelerated, they triggered a phenomenon known as compression. The Persian front ranks slowed as they engaged, but the hundreds of ships behind them continued to push forward into the narrow strait, with nowhere to turn. The straits became a mass of tangled oars and splintering wood. Steering failed, ships collided with their own allies, and heavily armored troops were thrown into deep water, where few knew how to swim. The physics of the bottleneck had weaponized the Persian armada's scale against itself. Numbers were no longer an advantage. They were a cause of suffocation. By evening, the Persian invasion fleet was broken. Up to 300 of their ships had been destroyed or captured, and the water was filled with the wreckage of an empire's ambition. Xerxes retreated, withdrawing the remains of his fleet to Asia. He left behind a land army, but he had lost his ability to supply it or threaten the Greek coast from the sea. This victory allowed the Athenian people to return to their ruined city and begin the work of rebuilding. The survival of the fleet ensured the survival of the Athenian democratic experiment, clearing the path for the city's eventual golden age. For Themistocles, the reward for this victory was short-lived. The Athenian citizens who once followed him eventually grew wary of his ambition and perceived arrogance. Years after the battle, the city he had saved voted to exile him. He was hunted across Greece and ultimately fled to the east, seeking refuge within the very Persian Empire he had once humiliated. Themistocles died a wealthy governor serving a Persian king, ruling a small city in Asia. The man who orchestrated the survival of the Athenian project ended his life as an outcast, preserved by the same empire he had spent his life trying to defeat.
History is never just black and white. So where do you stand? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe for more. New videos every week.